Welcome, Christopher Rollins. 107 days ago, my wife was having a bad day. She was pregnant and she was in pain. It was Saturday, November 25th. Thank you. Yeah, we'll wait. I like the focus on me. An only child. It was Saturday, November 25th. Contractions had woken my wife up at 4:30 or 5:30 in the morning. We didn't realize that they were contractions until several hours later. This is because of denial. The pain got worse. I got up around 8:30, around 9 o'clock. Blood and other fluids were involved, and she called her OBGYN, who just happened to be the on-call OBGYN at Maine Medical Center that weekend, when Maine Medical Center happened to be the place where we were planning on having our son. So her OB said, come on into the hospital, and we left. We were at the door by 9:10 or so. It was an incredibly anxious ride to the hospital. Amy and I, 39 years old at the time, that's a geriatric pregnancy technically. We'd had 3 miscarriages. We were looking at, like, if this wasn't some kind of false alarm, some crazy false alarm, the best case scenario here was an extremely premature child. We got to the hospital. Amy pointed out the Kaloum Tower. She said that's where we would be going. I dropped her off at the front on her insistence and parked out back in the parking garage at Maine Medical Center. There's approximately, I don't know if you've been there, there's approximately 3 miles from the parking garage to the check-in desk at Maine Medical Center. And as I booked it from the parking garage, I started fumbling around trying to get taking out my prescription glasses, trying to get my regular glasses on, and I realized on that 3-mile journey inside that my prescription glasses had fallen out somewhere in the car. And I just left them. I left them. I don't remember exactly how I wound up in Amy's room, but by the time I got there, she was on a gurney, and the nurse was telling me that she was in labor, and they were trying very hard to stop it, or to slow it down at the very least. But that the benefit of some of the drugs that slow down the labor are that they also protect the baby's brain if the baby is born that day. They moved us to another room, and it's at that point that I really should have realized we were having our son that day. It was big and spacious. There was a birthing tub in it. There were 3 doctors in between my wife's legs, and I said to the OB, I said, what are the chances that our son is born today? And she said about 80%, but I'm not a gambling woman. And she's not a gambling woman, but she was very tactful. The birthing process is wild. It reminded me of a famous scene from the Alien movies. Not the chest-bursting one. It's from Aliens. It's a scene where Sigourney Weaver and Michael Biehn and Bill Paxton and Jeanette Gordon, who's Vasquez, they're all holed up in a room. They're already on the run from the aliens. And Bill Paxton has his proximity sensor, and it's detecting aliens that are outside of the room. And he's like, 20 meters, 18 meters, 13 meters, 10. They're inside the room. They're coming. When we got to the hospital, Amy's cervix was at 4 centimeters, then it was 6 centimeters, 8 centimeters, 10 centimeters. I can't feel the cervix, he's coming today. The doctors had to rupture the water sac. He was in position and ready to go, but he couldn't break through. When they ruptured the water sac, I remember a splash, like a flood of water. It was like a wine glass had been thrown, like he was on Real Housewives of my wife's vagina. Shortly after that, there was a splash of blood. I still don't have an explanation for that. Everybody's fine. And then he was out. Our son was out. Gio was out. The first thing that he did is he screamed immediately. He peed immediately. It was miraculous to watch his skin go from gray to pink as his lungs processed oxygen for the first time. Something I had missed. 6 other people had entered the room during the birth. A half dozen people had entered the room while I was focused on my son being born. This was the NICU team, the Neonatal Intensive Care Unit team. They immediately picked up our son and they brought him to a table in there and they looked at him. They invited me over to check him out. They wrapped him up and Amy got to hold him for a couple of minutes and then they took him away. It was 11:26 in the morning. He weighed 3 pounds, 8 ounces. Yeah, he was born at 29 weeks and 5 days. Yeah, that's more than 10 weeks premature. I was still wearing my sunglasses when he was born. His name is Gunnar Olfine Bradford Rollins. We're calling him Geo. The next time we saw him was a couple hours later. He was in one of those incubator thingies. They're called isolettes, we learned. They mimic the temperature and humidity of the womb, and without those, the entire NICU ward would have to be at 98 degrees and 100% humidity, which would be terrible for the electronics in there, and if you had brought in your stamp collection. So that first day, Amy got to hold him for about 45 minutes. Just got to hold him against her. It turns out one of the best therapies for preemies is called kangaroo care, and it's just skin-to-skin contact. You take off your shirt, and the baby rests on you wearing just a diaper. I remember he had this squeaking breath. Every breath he took had a little squeak to it. It sounded like a tiny little accordion. It was adorable, but it was a sign that he was struggling to breathe. The doctors told us that they had a treatment for that. The NICU team, after about 45 minutes, they took him and they applied what's called surfactant. So at 29 to 30 weeks, baby lungs are not fully developed and they can stick to each other, stick to themselves, and the surfactant helps prevent that. So after about 45 minutes, they applied the surfactant, and that was really the only major medical intervention that he needed. He did still need extensive care, though. He would be in the NICU, he would be in the hospital for another 72 days. So at being born at 29 weeks, 30 weeks, he was small. As I mentioned, he couldn't really breathe, couldn't regulate his own temperature, and he couldn't feed. So apart from the isolate and the surfactant, he also had a CPAP for the beginning of his life, an infant CPAP, which applied pressure to his lungs to help keep them open. But they did not have to supply much oxygen. Some babies at that age need oxygen. And it's good that they didn't have to supply that oxygen, because too much oxygen at that stage developmentally can lead to blindness, which is what happened to Stevie Wonder. Stevie Wonder is a preemie, and you have too much oxygen. You learn a lot about other preemies when you have a preemie. Winston Churchill, Albert Einstein, Mark Twain, they were all born early. Isaac Newton was also born at about 30 weeks, and you have to wonder, like, all those centuries ago, what kind of care did they have for him, you know? So he had the CPAP for about a month, and he was making great progress. He was adding weight, his feeds were increasing, but we got our best gift on December 23rd that year. Our Christmas gift came a little bit early when they gave him an ounce of blood. An ounce of O negative made all the difference in our son's recovery. When they gave him that, he was noticeably pinker by the afternoon. By the next day, he posted an incredible weight gain. But also, that was the weekend that they took away the CPAP. He no longer needed that. They opened up the isolette, so it was now just a $100,000 bassinet. It was a great Christmas gift. So he's regulating his own temperature. He's breathing on his own. He's no longer a NICU baby. When the bed opened up, they moved him to the next area of care there. It's called CCN, the Continuing Care Nursery. And that's where we would tackle the final hurdle, which is learning to feed, learning to nurse. He had a feeding tube in from day one. It was in his mouth at first, but they moved it to his nostrils, and they would switch back and forth every couple of days on that. And we kept on offering him breast and bottle, but he struggled to develop his suck, swallow, breathe rhythm, it's called. And I'm pretty immature. So I've had thoughts about the suck, swallow, breathe rhythm, but I've never made, until this very moment, I've never addressed it as a topic that could be joked about. And I'm really only going to say that he mastered the suck, swallow, breathe rhythm on day 69. Yes. So in late January, Dr. Schoen came to us and she said that he'd be out of there in under a week. And we started making preparations to bring him home. That was a Wednesday that she made that prediction. On Saturday, the feeding tube came out. On Sunday, they gave him the car seat test, which is just to check and see that his heart and lungs will support him for 90 minutes in a car seat. And he passed with flying colors. I went in Monday morning expecting that we'd be bringing him home the next day. And Gio surprised us again with another early arrival. Dr. Schoen said, "Are you excited?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm pretty excited." And she was like, "Good, because he's coming home today." So I had gone in that day, my mom had met me there. Amy was gonna take the afternoon shift. And my mom left to go get Amy so we could all come home in the same car together. I gave Gio his last meal in the hospital. Amy arrived and we started packing up his room. In the 10 weeks that he had been in the hospital, he'd collected clothing and toys, books, pictures, just a bunch of stuff. We put that stuff on a cart. I got that stuff out to the car and drove the car around front. Meanwhile, they put my wife in a wheelchair and they put my son in his arms and then wheeled him out to me. And then we went home. And he weighed 8 pounds that day. It was February 5th. His due date was still 5 days later. I lived for 14,606 days before Gio arrived. And in all those days, I thought I had a pretty good idea about love and the many dimensions that it has, and the many ways that it can make you feel, how it makes food taste better, and music sound sweeter. And I was completely wrong. It was like, I was looking at it without glasses, you know? It was like I was looking at an inset and not the full map. It was like, you know when you get an Eggs Benedict and it's good, but then you cut into the yolk on that poached egg and it suffuses the dish with warmth and new flavor? It's like how the subjunctive mood can imbue a thought with wonderful new potential. Or like how when you learn how to paint, you start looking for brush strokes in the world around you. For 14,606 days, I lived one life. And for 107, I've lived another. And I'm so glad it came early. Thank you.
Christopher Rollins.